Can I be honest? I used to hate Mega Man 11. Back in 2018, I received my first video game system that wasn't a hand-me-down from my older brother, the Nintendo Switch. I absolutely loved this thing. I loved its shape, I loved its gimmick, and it still is a bloody fantastic piece of hardware. Granted, there was just one problem. I didn't have that many games. I got 2 games with my system. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and Minecraft Story Mode. No, not Minecraft, Minecraft Story Mode. I clearly had an impeccable taste at the time. So I did what any respectable fetus would do at that age, and I looked to the eShop to download as many free demos as physically possible. Or digitally possible, you know. I'm hilarious, aren't I? I had so much fun with these. I downloaded demos of games which I have yet to play to this day. I downloaded Snipper Clippers, The ARMS Global Test Punch, Dragon Quest Builders, all games which I've yet to properly play, but I still have fond memories of because of those demos. But there was one. The white whale of my Switch library. A demo for the love of Arcus in heaven I could not beat. And that demo was Mega Man 11. And I fucking hated it. Okay, that's a lie. I thought it was okay, but I really didn't get the hype. The Blue Bomber is a character that I hold near and dear to my heart, but that wasn't always the case. I didn't start playing Mega Man games until last year, where I bought the X Legacy Collection, quickly followed by the Classic Collection, followed by 11. It was there where my appreciation for the franchise grew, and I started to understand how these games were designed to be played. I understood that Mega Man was a series designed to be challenging, even flat out unfair at times, but that just makes beating the stages all the more sweeter. I understood how clearing a stage was something you'd have to prepare yourself for and work for in order to make progress, and that's what makes Mega Man games so unique. However, my little baby brain did not know that. I recently bought the full version of the game Mega Man 11, and now that I'm familiar with the franchise, I wanted to see if what everyone was saying back in 2018 was true. Whether I was right to hate on the game, or if this truly was the Blue Bomber's epic comeback like the scriptures foretold. I'm XLHazza, and today, I'm gonna be beating Mega Man 11. So, the first thing you'll notice about this game is its art style, and how it's a huge departure from the classic NES style that all the classic games have got so far. And the only way within my vocabulary I can possibly describe how I feel about this is that it's a grower and not a shower. Why are you laughing? Stop laughing. It's not funny. I used to think that the art style was a bit bland and uninspired, using cel shading and an outline effect over the character models to give it a cartoony art style. And while it's not the most original aesthetic in the world, it goes hand in hand with the gameplay of Mega Man. But we'll get into that in a sec. The plot of Mega Man 11 is Dr. Wily creates... Dude, honestly, who cares about the plot? If you've played one game, you've played them all. Basically, Dr. Wily brainwashes 8 of Light's robots, and Mega Man has to take them down with the help of the new Double Gear system. Big whoop. But that doesn't mean that the game has nothing going for its characters completely. Oh wait, Proto Man isn't in this game? Alright, this game is fucked. The game starts with an opening cutscene. Well, I say cutscene, but it's more like...
All thanks to you, Doc. You built me rock solid.
This. It starts with a text scroll saying how Dr. Light has gathered up all the world's current robot masters for their annual maintenance checkup. And I just absolutely love little details like this. I think it's a really cute way to introduce the characters. You get to meet them, see what they're like, and there's an actual reason for them to be here. Also with some, light world building as well. Thank you. I'll be here till Tuesday. And also, I just find it really cute how Dr. Light, being an expert at robotics, he's like the medical doctor for all robots. I know it's a small detail, but I just really love little traits like that. Also, another thing I just love is that when Roll is listing off the game's robot masters, it implies that they were only a handful of the robots that Dr. Light had to look at that day. So I just like to imagine that all the other robot masters from the previous games are just chilling in the other room eating bolts or something. Now, obviously, the black sheep here is the animation. Or lack thereof. But honestly, I really don't care. I mean, I'm not going to defend this. There's an awkward pause between every line. The dialogue is kind of cookie cutter, to be honest. And the animators do literally everything in their power to try and avoid actually animating. But if you're playing Mega Man for the lore, just play like Legends or something, dude, okay? Besides, these sections show up like 3 times in the entire game, so if it's a problem for you, you don't really have to sit through many of these. What? Dr. Wily? Who would have guessed? No. Fuck. The Mad Doctor brings up the Double Gear system, which was a device that both the doctors worked on when they were in university. Just kidding, this game still doesn't have lore. Wily grabs the robot masters and dips. Now play the game. I remember this stage like it was yesterday. Blockman's stage was the only playable stage within the demo, and I know the first half of the stage like it's the back of my goddamn hand. Blockman is highly considered the first level of the game. There's no set order for the levels, all the robot masters are unlocked from the get-go, but shut up, nobody asked. You start the stage with some basic jumps and some generic flying enemies called lyrics. To get past these, you'll have to jump over the platforms while shooting your Mega Buster at the right time, or else you'll fall off the platform. This seems extremely basic, but that's because it's designed to teach you the basics of Mega Man gameplay. And in the immortal words of Ego Raptor, jump and shoot. There's no way to aim the Mega Buster except for directly in front of your view, meaning if there's an enemy above you, you'll have to jump and time your shots perfectly in order to land a hit. The lyrics go down in 1, but there's still a challenge for new players, because the challenge isn't to pump them full of lemons, it's to see if you can even land a hit. This seems simple enough, but the enemies are almost never on the same level as you, so if you get swarmed by enemies, you're basically screwed. Well, that's unless you use the I love the double gear. There's pretty much no way to make a Mega Man game without sacrificing the challenge, which this game does under no account, but it's also impossible to target a Mega Man game to a casual audience if it seems impossible to beat. So instead it adds a bunch of optional stuff to the game to make it more interesting and easier for casual players. But if you're already a diehard fan who already knows the basics inside out, you don't have to use any of it. The shops from Mega Man 10 and 9 are back, which I really love as a concept. Instead of forcing you to try and fail at stages over and over again in a depressing repetition in order to win, you can collect bolts from your previous run-throughs and max out your life count and have a genuine chance of winning. But if you die on that run, you'll waste all your bolts. There's Rush Coil from the previous games to help out during platforming, mainly used to unlock hidden items within the stages. Later in the game, we also unlock Rush Jet, but that's later in the game, so that I'm not talking about. But by far, the biggest and bestest addition to the game is the double gear system. The double gear is a gauge which goes down whenever you're not using it, and whenever you choose to activate it, you can either hit the right bumper to activate the speed gear, or the left bumper for the power gear. The speed gear allows you to... Hold on, wait, I gotta check to see if that's right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure left for speed gear. Oh, fuck, hang on. No, I think that's right. If it's not right, I'll... Fuck. The speed gear slows down time to half speed, allowing you to aim your shots and dodge close quarter attacks. But the power gear does the exact opposite, increasing your Mega Buster's output, but forcing you away from the safety net of the speed gear. This is game balancing at its finest. You can either play it safe with the speed gear, slowly making your way through the stages, or you can rush through the whole stage with the power gear, putting yourself in danger in the process. Hell, there's even a move with the power gear where if you charge your Mega Buster for the entire time using the power gear, Mega Man will fire a massive wave, destroying anything it comes in contact with. This may seem like an overpowered move, but in order to pull it off in any meaningful capacity, you have to time it perfectly. First of all, you need to start charging the Mega Buster, then activate your power gear with no more than an empty gauge in order to be able to just start the process. Then, once you have the charge, you'll have to hold it until you can aim at your target and then fire at the right time. All the while making sure you don't get hit at any point or else you'll lose your charge. And whether you pull it off or not, afterwards you'll still be left with a full gear gauge, forcing you to wait for the cooldown. The double gear adds a safety net for anyone who finds the difficulty too hard. It also adds an extra sense of challenge for those who seek it. However, it can't be used forever, and you can't abuse it to gain an unfair advantage, forcing you to work with what you're given. Not only is this balancing for new players, it also feels like a natural evolution of the formula. And again, if you don't like it, you can just ignore it. Although, just be careful though, because the bosses use it this time too. Oh shit, yeah, Blockman. Blockman's stage has this cool pyramid theme. Since Blockman was built for construction, it only makes sense that when he starts to wreak havoc, he does what he does best and builds a palace for himself. And also, I'd just like to point out that the first few notes of Blockman's stage is literally at Doom's Gate, which does gain some respect points from me. During the length of the stage, Mega Man descends further into the pyramid as he gets closer to Blockman, even finding these ancient hieroglyphics, which aren't ancient at all. Blockman just built them for himself so he could fuel his ego. Subtle storytelling, I love it so much. He encounters these robots called Muaru Seas, what the fuck? Which uses a cylinder like a motorbike, full on Men in Black 3 style. These are a perfect example of how the double gear can be used. These robots can only be hit when this small window comes within your view. So the logical choice would be to use the speed gear to increase the time to land a shot. But if you're a daredevil and you use the power gear, you can instantly one-shot them. While learning the ropes, you'll probably use the speed gear to get your bearings, you even get an achievement for it. But on further playthroughs, the power gear is a no-brainer. Well, that is if you actually like being cool. Ha, I have no friends. You can see that while the pyramid is mostly complete, there are still conveyor belts and loose blocks getting in your way. So Mega Man has to ascend further up the pyramid in order to reach Blockman. The gimmicks in this stage are quite mundane, especially when compared to the other stages in the game, but as a quote-unquote first level, it does its job just fine. You know, you got your basic stuff, falling blocks, conveyor belts, a giant mashy spike plate which will grind you into a million little pieces. Oh hey, it's a metal, I love these guys. The other enemies in the stage do a good job as well. There's these robots called Crunch-Dons, which sound like a bad workout instructor, and also throws down their hammers where you can just jump on top of them to get past, or you can do what I did and brute force your way past with the power gear.
Eat shit, Jonathan.
The lyrics are pretty much there to keep you on your toes. They don't fire at you, only moving forward as you have to get onto their level to shoot them, or they'll probably knock you off. There's also these things called air stones, which shoot projectiles in every direction, and they're intangible until they try to hit you. Something Sonic the Hedgehog 2 would blatantly rip off 26 years earlier. These work really well for platforming, as you always have to be on the lookout for them as not to take a hit. There's even this one time where if you don't hit the robot perfectly the first time, it'll be out of range and you'll have to carry on with it firing at you. The only other enemy in the stage, other than these little cretins, is the mini-boss. In Mega Man 11, there's a mini-boss in each stage to divide the different acts of the stage and to show you how you're making progress. There'll be the opening section, which establishes the stage, a mini-boss, a middle section which descends further into the stage's themes, and then a final stretch to the end, which culminates in all the stage's themes coming together, and then finally the Robot Master. But we're not a Blockman yet, okay? Just wait a few more minutes, please. Thank you, children. The mini-boss is a Blockman stage is called Totema. He's pretty simple, but again, nothing really to complain about. It's a clever little mini-boss, teaching you to either save your shots with the power gear, or save your health with the speed gear.
Or cheese it with the chain blast, but I haven't beat Blast Man yet, so just stop. I know you can defeat the mini-bosses with people. Shut up.
Basically, there's these 4 rotating spiked circles which fall on you and restack on top of each other. But the twist is you can only damage one of them. It's pretty simple and easy to understand, however, I do remember dying here a lot in the demo, so you know, I guess there's that. But yeah, serviceable mini-boss, not really much to say. We destroy Totema
twice,
and we move on to the final act. Not Blockman yet, we still got one, we got one to go. You can always tell in a Mega Man stage when you're near to the end. There's no map indication, there's just subtle clues in the level design. Whether that be Acid Man's water getting progressively more acidic, or Blockman's pyramid getting higher in the distance, the day turning into dusk, most of the time you won't even notice. It'll just be a thought in the back of your head until you see the Wily logo and think, oh cool! And then you immediately get Shrek'd by Blockman.
Never thought you'd make it this far. I'll drop you like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, get used to the Robot Masters making bad puns, because that's a running theme in this game. Blockman is a relatively simple boss. He'll start by running around the stage, dropping blocks when you hit him. Again, use the speed gear if you need time, power gear if you're confident. I'm pretty sure you get it by now. Blockman's weakness is the Chain Blast, which you get from Blast Man. A lot of Mega Man's weakness don't make sense, but yeah, that makes sense. Blockman's all about construction, Blastman's all about destruction, easy enough to understand. However, we don't have the Chain Blast, so when you whittle him, I got spit all over my mic for that. When you whittle him down to half health, he'll activate the power gear, which doesn't just increase his damage output, but also his shape and structure. It's like Gigantamaxing, but actually good. All Robot Masters react differently with the double gear. Some will change shape with the power gear like Blockman, some will use special moves with the speed gear like Acid Man, they'll use the power gear to increase the severity of their attacks like Blast Man, or they'll just speed up with the speed gear, making it so every encounter has an ebb and flow to it. With our big epic gamer brains, we can easily deduce that the giant glowy red thing almost always means a big, gaping, giant weak spot. So naturally, we try to give it all hell. But soon you'll realize that his weak spot is only within your height range when he makes a step, meaning you won't be able to rapid-fire cheese it with the power gear. Blockman will cycle between 3 attacks, which you'll have to learn to perfection in order to dodge, but don't worry, I've played Punch-Out, I'll be fine. It's fine. There's an indication before his attack, but it's incredibly short, and they're extremely similar to each other, meaning if you're on high alert and panic, you'll confuse them and get curb-stomped. Like moi. They'll cycle between a close-range hand smack, which you'll have to keep your distance from, a long-range arm punch, which you'll have to hide under, making sure not to run into Blockman, and throwing clumps of bricks from the floor, dodging between the gaps. Keep in mind that during all of this, Blockman is working towards you, giving you less breathing space to hit his weak spot, which you'll have to make room for. This is a genuinely challenging boss fight, but never to the point where it feels unfair. Everything is clearly telegraphed, you can easily work out the patterns, as all good bosses should. But that doesn't mean it's a breeze either. It's a good challenge and will take a few attempts to beat, but like I said, it's the failures that make the victory all the more sweeter. But there's one last push before the end. Once you destroy Blockman's power gear, he transforms back into his base form. Starting to realize that he's lost, he runs around more frantically than at the beginning, realizing the ace up his sleeve he's been relying on is gone. There's not a single line of dialogue to indicate this, but you can just tell how he's feeling from the way he moves, throwing hordes of blocks at you in a last-ditch effort to win. You probably won't die here unless you're on low health from the previous stage. It's just delaying the inevitable. But when this happens, you and Blockman both know who's coming out on top here. Blockman's weapon is the block dropper. It allows you to drop concrete on nearby enemies with a huge range, with the power gear even increasing the severity and range of the attack. This becomes so useful in the later game, because not only do you have a method of attacking with a wider range, allowing you to have a bit more leeway with your accuracy, you also have a way of hitting enemies above and below your height level. This makes platforming with tricky enemy placements a breeze if you have enough weapon ammo. It also makes the enemy encounters where you have to get on their level no longer a problem. So if you know how to utilize this weapon, there's no longer a real challenge. And the best part of it is that in Blockman's stage, tricky enemy placements while platforming is most of the real challenge, meaning on repeat playthroughs, it won't be that stressful. Now that's what I call peak level design. But now, Acid Man. Acid Man has a really fun stage theme. It takes place in what appears to be some kind of water facility as you traverse through shallow pools and water pipes. Eventually, as you make your way through the stage, you find these enemies called pipettos, which, aside from being the cutest name I've ever heard, shoot acid from their pipettos, making the water turn progressively more acidic every time the projectiles hit the water. Probably in an attempt to contaminate the water supply. Jesus Christ. The acid changes from blue to yellow to red to finally green. You'd probably assume that red is the worst type of acid because our brains are, pardon my pun, hardwired to think that red. Kinda bad though. I mean, just look at my channel aesthetics.
Did you know that only a small percentage of you are actually subscribed?
In the opening to the stage, you start right off the bat with the worst kind of acid, the green one, and you have to make small jumps over it to indicate that this is what you have to avoid. However, when you're confronted with the first pool of blue water, you have no choice but to go through it, and you most likely won't be able to react to the first pipetto in time, so you'll probably be shown that the water becomes more acidic. Putting two and two together, you'll be able to figure out that if you let the water get green, say hello to Blockman for me! The interesting part, however, is that the acid only hurts you when it turns green. If it's yellow or red, the only disadvantage you have is that you have less attempts to stop the projectiles. Other than that, it's completely harmless in the short term. You can approach it in any way you'd like. You can try and blast the pipettos as much as you can to try and kill them before they even manage to inject any acid into the water, but then you run the risk of getting hit by whatever you're dealing with and miss the window to stop the projectiles. On the contrary, you can neglect the projectiles until the last minute and defeat any nearby enemies, but you might get so caught up with what you're doing, you can't make it in time. Again, you know the drill. Double gear if you need to. That's what I've been saying for the past, 20 minutes. As you pass through the stage, the water becomes more and more acidic, not doing anything to actually damage you until the very end where you reach Acid Man. The level design stays mostly the same, with the only difference being that the pools of acid are more stretched out with more tricky platforming on top of them. Meaning if you slip up, you're forced to face the consequences for longer and endure the acid, jumping across small platforms while dodging enemies. On the surface, it's building tension in a really mundane and non-threatening way, but because it affects your gameplay, it messes with your subconscious, which I absolutely die for. No, literally. I do really like the idea that even though the robot masters have gone haywire and wreaking havoc, they still use their abilities to the best of their advantage. So Acid Man contaminating the water supply just makes sense. The other enemies in this stage include these spiders, that's not a typo, look it up, which jump down and fall on you, full on chemical plant style. Actually, now that I think about it, this game is taking quite a lot from Sonic 2. The spiders, the starfishes, the color blue. I'm pretty sure Capcom can get sued for that, that's all I'm saying. But what sets these mechanical spiders from a 2D retro platformer, apart from the other mechanical spiders from a 2D retro platformer, is that instead of grabbing you and doing an oopsie, these ones split into smaller spider bots whenever they get hit. If you manage to get a charge shot and kill them in one, that's fine and you can advance through the stage. However, if you don't, meet the mini spiders.
those guys. The mini spiders are too small to be hit by conventional blasts, meaning you either have to wait for them to jump up to your view or fire a charge shot. If you wait for them to jump, you run the risk of misfiring, and if you do misfire, they're just going to keep getting closer. On the other hand, if you try to attempt a charge shot, you have to be 100% sure that you have enough time to build it up. So, if you're trying to hit the pipette projectile, whoops, trying to perform around the acid because the spiders made you miss, too bad. You're on the platform and you let the projectiles to the water so the robots can burn in a pH of minus 666. Hell yeah, man, that's mellish! It only just occurred to me after writing this script, I could have literally used the block dropper. Why? I like how in the background of the stage you can see pipes full of green acid, foreshadowing what comes later in the stage. I also really like how you can travel into pipes of acid and Mega Man doesn't drown because he's a robot. I know that fact isn't exclusive to 11, it happens in all the games, but shh! I also like how in the pipes there's bits of broken down debris and these robots got brushies to clear up the mess. I've got no idea what the spikes are doing down here though. Isn't this where water gets manufactured? The robots are sentient, aren't they? Is that a corpse? Why isn't this a safety hazard? Why are they cleaning bots called brushies? Why am I asking so many questions? The underwater sections are pretty fun. I know it's kind of a trope in 2D platformers that the water levels are always the most annoying, but I think Mega Man has always been an exception to that trope. There's not really any tension coming from the water levels, since Mega Man doesn't drown when he's in the water. Instead, the devs create tension by placing a fuck ton of instant kill spikes for every step you take. Like, seriously, what kind of a sick, deranged madman would do such a thing? Oh yeah, Wily. Forgot about him. The physics isn't bad either, because now in addition to the water current being introduced, making platforming that bit trickier, Mega Man can now also do the high jump thing he does in the other games, which is like... yeah, it's really fun, but I'm not sure that's how water works, Rock. After some intense spike platforming and a very generous extra life, we're introduced to the Cyclone W, the stage's mini-boss. The Cyclone W is the main maintenance bot for clearing acid out of the pipes. Again, always up for a bit of self-world, but... Again, always up for a bit of sort of world building. Very nice. He'll start by using these vacuums that swish up and down, and you'll have to either slide under them or jump over them with the water physics. A clever use of the water boss while keeping to the set rules established by the previous games. He'll send out more cleaner bots called droppies to help try and wipe out Mega Man. Pun not intended, but I will take it. The Cyclone will create a cyclone, increasing the current as Mega Man has to try and avoid the droppies. The Cyclone will also send out wipies, which are pretty much bigger brushies, which are pretty much bigger droppies, having a larger hitbox and requiring more shots to kill. Once it's done with the Cyclone, it'll leave itself vulnerable to attack, allowing you to power gear until it burns in a wet grave of bubbling acid! I like it a lot. After the most stressful spike path in history, that's a complete lie, it's actually pretty tame for Mega Man standards, you see the green acid followed by that familiar logo. Dr. Willy.
Ruined my new concoction. Take an acid bath.
So, I don't really know much about Acid Man, however, I do know that he's weak to the block dropper, which we do have, so I guess we'll try it. You could say that I crushed it. Acid Man's weakness is the block dropper. I feel like I should apologize for the previous line. Acid Man's weakness is the block dropper. I mean, I do like how the first weakness you'd be able to come across in the game is laid out in a way that you'll probably accidentally stumble across playing it for the first time. And like, technically Acid Man's weapon is a shield, and I suppose that kind of makes sense. The Block Man's weapon would damage it, but in real life, you don't think to yourself, oh, acid, I'm gonna throw a brick at it. I fear I've made a terrible mistake. A lot of Robot Master's weaknesses in Mega Man games are fair to the point where it gives you a helping advantage, but never to the point where it's a free win. Acid Man could not be further from that case. Like, I would genuinely like to tell you more about this boss, but I killed him so early on in the fight with the block dropper that I couldn't tell you even if I tried. Rip Acid Man, man. That was freaking brutal. Acid Man gives you the acid barrier, this game's answer to the shield trope in Mega Man. All Mega Man games ever since 2 have usually had some sort of shield weapon, all sharing a similar function. You have 2's leaf shield, 6's plant barrier, 5's star crash, etc. The acid barrier doesn't block typical attacks. It instead melts projectiles entirely, being completely invulnerable to far-off enemies, with the catch being that the shield automatically disperses over time and can't block usual enemy attacks without bursting. Mega Man could only fire these acid spits when equipped with the barrier, doing what no Mega Man projectile has ever done before:
Applying gravity.
This obviously nerfs your accuracy, and I think attack damage, I don't know for sure, but that would make sense for a defense weapon. However, this is unless you apply the power gear, which in that case, sweet Arceus in heaven, if you ever see this thing, you better run! The acid barrier turns extremely corrosive when applying the double gear, increasing the diameter of the shield, making it last longer. And on top of that, increasing your damage output. And on top of that, making it so instead of taking damage when you collide with an enemy, they burn up faster than those spiders. Like... what? I wonder if the acid barrier resists the acid blow. Oh. I appreciate the attention to detail.